So Mark, take me through how you went from going from a face-to-face personal trainer. I've seen you post about doing outdoor sessions like right beside the Sydney Harbour Bridge outside. How did you go from that to, being able to post a podcast about where you shared, this is how I kind of built up my $45 million investment portfolio? Because that is, rags to riches. It's pretty much every personal trainer's dream to go from trading your time for money to being able to have a really really large net worth. So you know take me through it. How did it start?
Yeah, it's funny. Like it's not the easiest kind of way to look back. People often think, all right, like let's look back and kind of be like, what's this defining moment that like just changed things? And when you look back at life, it's a lot of, there was this little tiny thing, and then that triggered this other thing, and then that triggered this other thing, and yeah, it's a lot of connecting the dots, looking back. And for me, I started off doing like park fitness and group classes and boxing and stuff like that. And I think when people go, oh, like really, like that's crazy, like you did that, and I'm I'm 36, so the industry's changed a lot. And, I became a personal trainer straight out of school. I went to Sydney Boys High, which was an academic high school, like one of the best in Australia. They always finish like top 3 or 4. And I got in a lot of trouble, and I didn't do well to my ability, that's for sure. And so I didn't go to university, and I went and became a personal trainer straight after school, and went to TAFE, did my Cert 3, Cert 4, and I love TAFE actually. And a lot of people do their online certs in like a week. I spent a year at TAFE, and then I did another, I think 6 or 9 months doing my diploma in fitness, and I did another certificate in sports nutrition. And so I did a lot of learning back then, which I found valuable. But then, yeah, it's a different industry. So I didn't kind of jump on to going to gyms. I lived in an area where there weren't kind of big gyms. I was kind of living at Kingsford and in Sydney. And yeah, I used to train at this kind of little RSL club. And it was, I actually applied for a job and didn't get the job there. Um, like many other places. And so, yeah, I just did kind of park fitness, and that was fine. And like most PTs are kind of going through the motions and whatnot. And it took me quite a number of years to really do much with it. And it was when I kind of moved to Mascot, near the airport in Sydney, and I got a job at my gym at East Gardens, if you know that one, and found a bodybuilding gym. And yeah, it was good. I was selling, my session rate was like $40, and my goal
For an
was
hour?
this. I think I did $40 for 40 minutes, something like that, off the top of my head. And it was great though, because obviously back then I was just doing cash, and my thing was I just wanted to be the busiest person in the gym, and so people were charging more, and I didn't think they were the best trainers, to say the least. And nothing against them, but again, they're just your standard trainers, turning up, and that's what I was. Obviously, like most trainers at the start, but that's where I started to learn more about education and stuff like that. And my goal was just to be the busiest person in the gym. So I'll just work all morning, all night. It was great because I was able to just get better as a coach, and I really apply a lot of the things that I was learning, all the knowledge I was accumulating. And so I really got into, my brother Glenn actually taught me about like Clean Health Fitness Institute, or Clean Health back then, and Charles Poliquin, and started to see all this crazy stuff of education and stuff like that. Like my background was more like I wanted to do bodybuilding and stuff like that. And here you're learning about much more advanced strength periodization and things like that, and nutrition. And yeah, that's what kind of got me interested. And I did some of their courses, and then I applied for a job at Clean Health, and I was finally kind of doing well as a PT. I was like making 150K or something as a PT in cash when I was about like 26 or something. So I was doing well for me, that I felt like a millionaire back then, doing,
Yeah.
whereas, and then I went to Clean Health, and I was making about like 40K. But I took this gigantic pay cut because I wanted to go where other great coaches were. And they had a lot of really educated coaches, far more experienced than me. And yeah, I just wanted to be in an environment in the city where people were training high level people. And I wanted to be around that. For me, like I never had any financial goals whatsoever. Like I don't think, well, it's different to these days. You don't get into PT back then to become, like a financial successful person. Like for me, it was just like my goal was just to pay my bills, etc. And yeah, that was it. So I was just obsessed with becoming like the best coach. So when I went to Clean Health and spoke to Dane McDonald, who's one of my best friends these days, and the owner of Clean Health, and like I think Clean Health's probably like the third or fourth biggest education company in the world in fitness. So they've built this massive thing. And then I was like, when I applied, I was like, I'm going to be the best coach in the world. I was like, so why should I hire you? I'm like, I'm going to be the best coach in Australia. And like, I was very obsessive like that. And I genuinely believed it, and I always still believe it, my coaching abilities. And so, yeah, I went there in that mindset of, I just want to be a great coach. And that kind of really laid the foundations for everything I've kind of achieved, I think, from a financial sense, I guess, is that I never had any kind of business coaching or marketing. I didn't read business books or marketing books or anything like that. The first few years of running a business like I did, and everything I kind of achieved was off the back end of just getting world-leading results. I used to get incredible results and post these results. And even when I only had like 1,000 followers on social media, I was getting personal trainers all over the world wanting to hire me. And yeah, so that's kind of where I then went to Ultimate Performance and was the head coach there, and then got hired back to Clean Health to be their global head of education in, I think, 2018. And that's where things kind of really took off. And I started lecturing around the world to personal trainers, and I started training a lot of big people like Lauren Simpson, and I coached Lauren and then coached her to becoming the WBFF World Bikini Champion. I had I think I had about 7 or 8 girls back then with over 1 million followers on Instagram, which back then was, a gigantic thing. It's like having 10 million followers now, back in those days. And that really built my name up, and I had great clients all over the world, like big name women in different parts that really built me up in America and the UK and whatnot, and obviously Lauren in Australia. And yeah, so that's kind of like laid the foundations. And then I started my own thing back in 2019. Technically, I was partnered with Clean Health, and Dane had a kind of joint venture, and we did my guidebook programs. And I think, yeah, and this is something I give Dane full credit for, like, it was like, let's bring out an ebook. And I was like, a little bit, whatever. The first ebook we kind of put out, I think it was about $85 or something Australian, 59 or something USD. I think we sold about 5,000 in the first week. So I made more money than the previous year as like a world leading coach in like 5-6 days with the first guidebook I brought out in 2019. I was like, okay, cool. There's something here. So often again with business or whatever you're doing in life, a result like that didn't come from being like, oh man, I want to make this money and selling guidebooks. It just came from a byproduct of trying to be a great coach. And then trying being a great coach, I then had no more time to take people on one-to-one, because you just maximize obviously selling time for money with clients, which I loved. But again, I love training people in person, but we're at Chatswood at Clean Health, and you're limited obviously to the people in that kind of city, right? And then online, you're only so limited, and I was teaching and whatnot, and my social media started to grow. So all these things kind of forced me to adapt and make changes. Yeah, and so then you put out something with not really knowing what to expect, and it went well. And then, yeah, and that's kind of just then laid the foundations. And yeah, I think I probably sold about 300,000 training programs probably since then. And then, yeah, done some good things. And that kind of really just led to, I guess, an evolution of myself, which is always evolving. And yeah, I'm always kind of learning and trying things and failing over and over and over, and then trying to find something that works. And you find it, then you double down and triple down and whatnot. So yeah, I like to kind of, yeah, I know, I kind of think of myself as a person looking back. There was no real kind of like, this is the business plan to get to what I'm doing. It was kind of just coming from a byproduct of my just hunger to be like truly the best coach in the world. Like, to me, success was never about money. It was never about any of that stuff or social media. It was just, I was obsessed with that ability to help people go from like point A to point B. That's like, before transformations became this thing to market, I saw transformations as like, oh my God, like that before and after photo. I was like, before it was like this great marketing tool. I was just like mesmerized by like thinking a coach had this power to take someone from, point A being, 90 kilos overweight to then 12 weeks later, 75 kilos, shredded, looking amazing, happy, confident. And I just was like, those coaches are wizards. And so that's where like, yeah, I was just always something that made me kind of obsessed with kind of learning. And then that I think hunger to be a great coach then kind of allowed me to kind of build my business off it. So quite different. Whereas most, we see with fitness people, well, I'm sure you've seen in the last 6-7 years, they create businesses off them being a big, big, big social media. People liked how they looked. They were popular. So then in turn, they created a business, and there was nothing wrong with that, the typical influencer. Whereas I was kind of like the anti-influencer in that I didn't have the big following. I wasn't ridiculously good looking or ridiculously jacked and whatnot, but I was the coach of many of your favorite influencers. I was the coach behind many of your favorite influencers' bodies and your favorite bikini champs and stuff like that. So yeah, it was a different way I kind of went about stuff. And so whereas everyone else was kind of selling themselves as being the star, I was selling my methods kind of being the star. I was more so, well, don't use my programs to look like me. Use my programs to look like my clients. And then that helped because, again, I might have a client who was jacked, a client who was middle-aged, a client who was this and that. And people could see themselves in different clients, which helped then have people go, oh, wow, he could help me. It wasn't just kind of about me. So yeah, that's kind of where it did with the whole fitness business. And then, with the whole investing stand of, I came into, having no money and majority of my life to making solid money. And all of a sudden I was like, well, what do I want to do with it? And I love American sport. And by the, always everything I wear is primarily American teams, sport teams and whatnot, as anyone who follows me knows. And, I used to, being Australian, the money in American sport is just absurd, right? And you always used to hear about these Americans who would make, $100 million in 6 years in the NBA. And then 2 years after the NBA, they're broke. Literally, they're just no financial education. So that's where I started making good money. I was like, oh, wow, I should do something with it. I should, learn something about it. And for me, yeah, that's what kind of created my hunger to learn again. I read all these books, read everything and whatnot for a fair few years, and then started to invest. And yeah, my big fear was kind of, because it took so long and so much hard work to get to where I was kind of finally earning a decent living. I didn't want to kind of burn through it like kind of a lot of the people you'd see, and then you'd have nothing to show for all that hard work over the years. So that was kind of, that led me to investing. So yeah, that's kind of my story.
And as someone that bought your educational material, went to your courses, I remember going to Clean Health and watching you and your brother. I think this was when you were talking about your Gen Pop transformation. It was like a seminar over, it was maybe an entire day or a couple of days. And that's when Jake was there too, if you remember Jake. And I remember just being kind of mind blown with all the content that you had. And education was the primary focus. And it's such a shame that now in fitness, it's completely backwards. Like you were saying, it's like marketing downward. It's like, this guy has top tier genetics. He's shredded. He may or may not be using some performance enhancing drugs. And he just kind of like looks the part, markets, does some really great videos, goes viral. And then that's kind of like the strategy where you kind of reverse engineered from education up. And it kind of has more of this longevity approach where people actually get results. It's like more retention and still getting new people. But now I feel like the fitness influencer blueprint, because there's so many people trying to promote, they're like, this is what you have to do. You have to do ads and you have to do all of that. It's so short-lived. Like they're just always chasing viral videos to get new people in, but they're not really retaining. And I know that because I train people that come from programs like this. They just get spit out from this big fitness influencer with hundreds and thousands of followers. They got nothing. They got treated like a number. It was meant to be personalized. There was a cookie cutter plan. And then they're just like, even worse off than when they first started, because they feel let down because they had these high hopes with this famous person and then they just kind of got let down. What was the point where you realized education for you was the thing that you wanted to really double down on? Because being in the trenches as a face-to-face personal trainer for years, there is a lot of trainers that don't really double down on education. They try to double down on their personality or how many people they talk to on the gym floor per week. What made you focus on education?
I think it was just a logical kind of decision of that's what it kind of felt like that was my strength, you know. And again, if you're an influencer and you're the most beautiful person in the world and you have the greatest bikini body in the world and you just wore, you know, a suit all day and didn't show, it probably wouldn't help you sell a glute program, right? If you hid your glutes, right? So you kind of go double down on your strengths. And for me, again, I went back to that. Education was what helped me become, you know, a coach at the best gyms, let alone, you know, become head coach and then head of education at some of the most powerful brands in the world of fitness. For me, it was just kind of doing what I was doing. You know, it wasn't it was just an organic way of kind of presenting what I did, talk about at a course, or present what I did, talk about with a client one-to-one, just into that area on mass of, I guess, social media. And yeah, I was just kind of doubling down on what I knew. And the other way I'd kind of also look at it was that back when I started to do my programs, the space was, again, really big fitness people, primarily women doing what I was about to do. And none of them had any education to their stuff. It was, here's a program, here's your workout, your exercises. There was no kind of sense of why you're doing it, how you're doing it. Well, maybe a few instructions, but why? What's the method? Why are we actually doing it like this? What's the plan of attack? What's the strategy? And for me, I was just like, well, that didn't really make people better outside of just doing it. Yes, you'd get a result, you just followed it, but you didn't know why you got the result. You didn't know what to do from here. So for me, it was just kind of simplicity of, hey, let's explain why we're doing something, just like you would with a client. When you get a new client, why are they choosing this exercise? Why are their calories like this? Why did we choose this macronutrient split? So that was just my focus. When people think education, I think a lot of times, especially coaches, they expect this, you know, PhD stuff, and majority of that stuff's so overkill and so non-relatable nor needed for most everyday people. People just want to understand why they're doing something and how to do it. And, you know, what's the pros of doing this? Like, why should I suffer or why should I feel uncomfortable doing this? Like, what's the yield from, you know, investing into this exercise, investing to you as a coach? And the more people understand what they're kind of why they're doing something, then it also drives adherence. And for me, again, it went back to if people understand the point of something, they understand the potential reward from it, they're more likely to stick to it, which then again drives compliance, which drives, you know, ultimately that result. And so for me, it's just about results. What can we do to get results? And yeah, back then, no one was really like at a big level really pushing out results. It was like, join my challenge, join my stuff, and here's how I look. Whereas for me, it was, here's education about how I train people. Here's my results. Here's how I got this person this result. And yeah, that just kind of fed the whole idea to everyone else that, hey, look at all these results he's getting with people. That could be me. And I liked that I was learning. They learned from me and got better. They didn't just do it. And then that also helped really drive in that sense of continuing with your program. So that's why I build a lot of my programs to be series, just like I would with a one-to-one client who, you know, I worked with someone elite. They stayed with me 1, 2, 3 years. It wasn't, hey, do an 8-week challenge and leave. And that's also what helped me, I think, with, again, selling programs is, you know, if you get one person and they buy one program, or you get one person in and they stay with you for 3 years and buy 12 programs, that's obviously a huge difference in customer lifetime value and things like that. And that's like, yeah, like I think a lot of people were just like, let's just get someone in. Cool, we got a sale. Whereas for me, I was like, let's get them someone in, let's get them an amazing result, and then let's build off that. And that's, again, people don't want to stay long term if they don't understand the education around why. Like, why would Lauren work with me a couple of years? Why did my other world champions work with me for a couple of years? The more people understood that you get better and better and better, it also helped me as a business to drive that adherence, and people wanted to come back and stay with your methods for long term.
I think whether people say it or not, what I've found is people actually do want to know why they're doing what they're doing, because they often just get told, just do this program, or just do this workout and then and they think it like you just keep repeating the same workouts and the same training program and they just go around in circles. But when I started explaining, like you did, obviously I basically based my coaching off what I learned from you, and even when I started doing educational courses when I found out the coaches that I really looked up to were doing them too. Like I was doing Tony Batagi's one in the north over here, and then I was doing yours, and I was doing all of them. And so many personal trainers weren't doing it. They were just walking the gym floor, rinsing, repeating, getting dropped, trying to find heaps of people in this kind of circular, really non-fulfilling personal training cycle. But when you doubled down and gave people a long-term strategy, they really locked in. And people really like to have a plan, like I do. I'm sure you do with your training and your, even life and investing and stuff like that. You need a plan or else you just drop off. And in training, I think it's our role to give it to them. And I want to kind of stick on training a little bit for a while, because I think that's some of the best stuff I've learned from you is your program design work. I think that's really awesome. The strategies around periodization that often we don't get taught initially when we try to train to become personal trainers. And I wanted to ask you what things you've changed your mind on with training. Because like you said, the fitness industry and even principles haven't really changed, but fitness has changed a lot. What has your mind changed on with your training specifically and how you program for other people?
Obviously, yeah, we learn a lot, and there's always new science coming out, and sometimes the science confirms what we know. Sometimes it goes against completely what we know. Sometimes you get one study that says something and another study that contradicts it. So yeah, there's always information coming out to make you go, oh, maybe this is not right, or maybe I should do this differently. And as a whole, you also want to look back and go, look at my results. How are my clients performing? Because that's also still evidence, right? And there's a difference between evidence of, hey, this worked for me as at myself, this because, I train this way, versus, hey, I train many, many people and this worked for many, many people. And I train people who are natural, and I train people who were beginners, intermediate, advanced, world elite, and all these kind of methods were working. So obviously that kind of success leaves clues, right? That you must be doing something right. You're not kind of getting some geared up person where you could give them anything in the world and versus, or again, yourself. You're just not just working, N of one, what you're working yourself. So I look back and think a lot of the stuff that comes out today, again, talks about like volume and intensifiers probably not being that important or needed, and volume probably could have been achieved with less. I also look back and look at my old programs and see the results I got, and I'm like, that makes a lot of sense. But then I also look back at the results I was getting, and they're still, I think, head and shoulders above pretty much everyone were getting and still getting when I was actually truly training people. And obviously I run big business now these days, so I'm not training people like I am in the trenches as much. But yeah, so like that to me says, yes, there's things that are coming out that maybe I could do a tiny bit differently, but from a whole, there's not too much I'll tweak. And it's more about often understanding like correlation versus causation. Like, was it that you did, 10 reps for a phase, and then you did 5 reps for a training phase, and you went back up to 8 reps, and you went down to 3, like undulating rep ranges? Was it that led to the growth? Or was it that they kept doing those same key movement patterns and got better and better and whatever? So like we know, like, different rep ranges will probably produce the same hypertrophy, adaptations to some degree. Take into account, obviously, various kind of variables, but there's nothing too kind of crazy, I'd say, that I would look at differently. It's more so the identifying kind of really what you're trying to do. Like, so for me, I've always looked at myself as a blend of a strength coach and a hypertrophy coach. I don't look at myself as like a bodybuilding coach. I don't look at myself as a powerlifting coach. I look at someone who tries to get people looking jacked, shredded, have muscle in all the right places. I'm not trying to create Mr. Olympia. If that was the case, I probably wouldn't need to go as low with the reps that I use with some people, right? Likewise, if I'm trying to train a powerlifter, I probably wouldn't be doing, as much supplementary exercises as I would be doing. So I kind of look at myself in a way trying to program to be the best of both worlds. I try to create strong people, but also have great muscle mass in all the right places to accentuate their physique. And that kind of comes back to, again, like this probably the simplest principle I look at is, knowing if you're hypertrophy, I'd say you probably need a little bit less volume as a whole than what you'd need. But the way, I'd probably say, the best way I'd say is that these days, if I was looking at trying to get someone as jacked as possible, I would probably be doing the one thing differently. I'd probably be doing less sets of one or two key movement patterns and try to distribute more of that training volume across more exercise in that workout. For example, let's say I'm doing a hypertrophy program for someone who wants to get jacked in their lower body as a woman. Before, I might have done, say, 5 sets of 5 squats, and then 3 sets of a B series, 3 sets of C series, and so the predominant bulk was in the squat, right? But now I'd look at going, well, for hypertrophy, I'd probably want to regress that maybe for 3 sets to the squat and take some of that volume towards more additional movement patterns for the lower body. Whereas that way, with hypertrophy, you're kind of looking at trying to train as much muscle tissue as you can, rather than kind of do just a few key big movement patterns. Whereas with strength, it kind of goes back to the same thing. Whereas therefore with strength, you kind of want to be doing more repeated efforts of that same key movement pattern. So that's the only thing I'd say is that, again, like, it's not something I'd personally change, but that's the way I kind of look at stuff is like, if hypertrophy, I'd be doing less, probably 5-set squat phases or 5-set deadlift phases, still squat, but then take some of that sets to an abduction movement or a leg curl movement or a specialty movement. And give yourself a better chance to get more muscle tissue hit on a particular area. Whereas with strength, again, I'll just kind of go back to just doubling down. If you want to get strong in a specific movement, a lot of repeated efforts of that same movement pattern over and over and over. And then a couple of sets. And what's probably the good thing I see, though, is with hypertrophy is that we see good research showing that you can do really good things with building muscle with low amounts of volume, even just 1 to 2 hard working sets. So that's good to know, because it's quite easy to add in a little bit of abduction work, a little bit of leg extension on the back of kind of strength phases without kind of keeping them in the session for ages. So nothing too crazy in the training, man. Like, I'd say periodization probably matters more in the way that I program, because I do really implement kind of undulating phases of hypertrophy, traditional hypertrophy versus strength phases. Whereas if you're just trying to go, I just want to do hypertrophy and just get jacked, probably less dramatic periodization probably isn't as needed. I'd say periodization, though, is great, I think. And I think something I think periodization is super underrated for is just understanding people's personal enjoyment from a session. And what I mean by that is, like, if you want someone to get strong at the squat, right? You want to squat, pretty simple. But this is where people go, oh, I don't want to just squat all the time. Squats are boring. But you can keep squatting over and over and over, but make each squat phase quite different and really have a different identity. You can do a heels elevated high bar. You can do a high bar. You can do a low bar squat. You can do a box squat. You can do a pull squat. You can do a slow eccentric. A lot of getting kind of really, really strong and even jacked at these big movements is just repeated efforts at these key movement patterns. But I feel a lot of people don't realize that small tweaks don't impact negatively your rate of improvements. They can enhance your improvements, but those small tweaks can also make doing that same movement pattern over and over again far more mentally stimulating. Whereas a lot of people think, all right, just squat every day. How boring for a year first on your lower body day. It's like, well, every 4 weeks we can change. Just a small thing. You just going from like a 5-rep, 5-second eccentric into the next phase, something where you want to be more greater velocity. So you do like a 1 1/4. You're doing the exact same squat, high bar, but just different tempos can make it feel like a whole different movement. And that's just something that I guess my methodology is having people do the same key core movement patterns for the most part, but we implement different rep ranges, different tempos, slightly different, bar positions and things like that, to have people just drill in that movement pattern, but get small tweaks. So it always feels exciting. It always feels kind of stimulating, and this tweak is not enough where it discounts kind of all the stuff you did before, and you can then use that small tweak to say, for example, improve a weak portion of your lift and get better. So an example would be if you're doing a lot of low bar squats and you notice that your hips are just always shooting up, it could be a sign that, hey, maybe let's spend the time getting your quads a little bit stronger. So you give them one, a heels out of a higher bar session. So you spend time targeting, deep knee flexion, deep squats, torso upright, knees really far forward, quite different to what they're doing. That's still going to have a great carryover to their low bar squat strength. It's going to complement it, but then it also gives them versatility to their training week where it's stimulating mentally as well. So yeah, the way I always look at programming is how can we make it intelligent and ultimately lead to incredible results whilst also being enjoyable. And enjoyable doesn't mean making up every single session and just doing stupid shit. Enjoyable means progressing, but also intelligent swaps where you can go, hey, let's do small tweaks here and there to keep people mentally stimulated without it kind of having to be stupid, if that kind of makes sense.
Yeah, 100%. And how about nutrition? Since training hasn't changed too much, I would say, there's a couple of things, but is your approach to nutrition similar?
Nutrition is, so I'd say probably when I really kind of got my name out there on social media, nutrition was something I'd go really hard on if it fits your macros. And I'd go really hard on probably not playing all your cards at once in a calorie deficit, like chipping away. Work your way down slowly. When you plateau, decrease slightly. When you work your way down a bit more, plateau, decrease slightly. And I'd say, again, there's nuance to it, but for myself, for example, and you learn a lot coaching a lot of people and also yourself. And for me, I've gone through lots of phases, in myself. And right now, like, for example, I lost, 13 kilos or something recently, and I've done no kind of even fits your macros approach at all, right? It's just been as strict as possible. And does that mean I don't believe in it if it fits your macros? No, it just means that for me right now, I'm different to who I was in, say, 2017, 2018. During COVID, I got super depressed during our lockdowns. And for the first time ever in my life, I developed binge eating, and I never had that problem before. Once I developed the binge eating kind of phase, or it hasn't kind of gone away. And so I went from being a person who could, have a donut and stop and make it fit into my macros easily and just stop, to if I have something lately, the last few years, it kind of opens up that I want more and more and more. And I don't feel satiated and it's just crave it. It's kind of like an alcohol. You give them a bit. And so this is where, again, coaching to the individual is important, because for myself, I coach myself at the moment differently because I've gone really, really strict. And one of the reasons I did that is because I really want to retrain my brain chemistry to enjoying taste of more traditional kind of micronutrient dense foods. When you've just had years of eating shit, your body's just so used to eating, super, super, delicious foods and all this stuff. I wanted to, enjoy, when you have fruit, it just felt like nothing. Now when I have fruit, I have berries all the time, bananas. It tastes amazing.
Amazing. Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. And I just had for breakfast before this oats with berries and banana and stuff like that. And it tastes 100 times better than what it did 6 months ago when you're just always having the stuff. And by doing that and not having other stuff, even though, yes, I think it's good to have balance, for someone like myself who struggled a lot with binge eating, it's been really useful for me being that way, because it's kind of retrained myself to enjoy, not just, all right, you have to eat healthy because you want to be healthy, but actually enjoying the process to make it more sustainable, not just going, eat this to be less fat. It's like, eat this because, yes, it tastes, I enjoy the benefits of it in a multifaceted way. So that's for something I've changed just within myself. And I think, again, I think we chatted about it before we started the podcast, was by also with a really, really, really flexible approach to nutrition, I just found you're making endless decisions over the day. You have to make a decision. What does this fit? And trying to play Tetris with your macros constantly. And it just gave me another complexity to stress about and worry about. Whereas going less flexible, like I still rotate probably between 10, 12, 13 different kind of foods in the day or in the week or whatever. But by going less broad with my flexibility, it's allowed me to think less and make faster decisions, more intelligent decisions. And yeah, so that's kind of worked for me. And probably the other big one, as I said, was I've become more of a proponent of a bit more aggressive deficits these days. And I remember when you hear aggressive deficits, 7, 8, 9 years ago, it's like, oh, that's
Muscle
going to
loss.
muscle loss, going to crash your metabolism. Probably the biggest thing, man, I'd say is, again, it depends, horses for courses. It's a saying my dad used to always say. It depends on many variables. And the way, people used to say, well, aggressive deficits lead to negative metabolic adaptations coming quicker, right? It's like, all right, your metabolism slows down more quickly and you're more likely to binge, or you're more likely to feel worse more quickly, and not as sustainable and all that stuff. It's like, well, yes, because you get the result quicker. So here's the thing, right? And this is something I just like to explain to people. Like metabolic adaptation, where your metabolic rate slows down, your NEAT levels lower, so you expend less calories, you feel hungrier, your hunger hormones, ghrelin and leptin, satiety, all become a bit more negative, right? All this negative metabolic adaptation doesn't happen out of nowhere. It happens in response to weight loss. So if you lose 10 kilos in 20 weeks, you're going to experience metabolic, let's say 10 kilos is kind of the area where for you experience metabolic adaptation. Everyone's a little bit different. But if you lose 10 kilos in 24 weeks, you're going to get all those negatives. It just took longer to get there. Whereas if you lost 10 kilos in 10 weeks, you're also going to experience those same negative metabolic adaptations because you lost 10 kilos. It wasn't that because you did a fast deficit that it ruined you. You just got the result quicker. So as a byproduct of faster results is you experience those negatives more quickly, but you also experience the results more quickly. And how do you fix those negative metabolic adaptations? Well, cool. You just primarily get out of a deficit, spend time out of a deficit, maintenance, maybe potentially put on a little bit of weight if you need to. But point is that one of the pros to an aggressive approach is that you get more time out of a calorie deficit in reality because you're spending less time in a calorie deficit to get the result. So the people are always like, oh, let's slow and steady wins the race approach. If you take 24 weeks to lose, 10 kilos, you're still in a calorie deficit for 24 weeks. It means you're probably not optimizing things like your performance. You're not optimizing muscle building. Whereas if you can lose it in 10 weeks, then that means an extra 14 weeks you can be out of a calorie deficit with calories up, experiencing negative metabolic adaptation effects, not, feeling tired and hungry and your performance dropping. So that's one of the things I've become a bit more of a proponent of. But again, it depends. So if I'm training like a comp competitor, it's different. So I'm kind of more talking about, a transformation, someone, general population. I consider like myself even, it's, someone who wants to get to I like to kind of say like an aggressive deficit, I think is a great place to be for someone whose end goal is a body fat that they can maintain. So if you do an aggressive calorie deficit and you're trying to get superhuman lean as a competitor, that's not an end goal that you can maintain. Getting super, 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 super lean, yes, there's more negatives associated. But if you're just an everyday person trying to lose 10 kilos and you're 30% body fat, you losing that weight really quickly, plus obviously resistance training, eating protein, eating fiber, doing it in a balanced way and a manageable way, which doesn't ruin your life, etc. I feel like that's probably going to be more of a positive because then you can get out of it quickly. Again, I forget where I saw it. Again, there's research kind of showing that people who have really high body fat actually stuck to, or I think got better results over a long period of time than people who did a really slow concerted deficit. And the reason for this was nothing physiologically. The reason was, and this is, I actually used to talk about this in my Gen Pop course back in 2018, was that people, this actually supports what I said, it makes me sound smart, but the reason why the people who did the aggressive approaches actually got better results in the end was because the fast results at the start created mental buy-in. It made them go, wow, you know what? I can fucking do this. I can lose weight. It's possible. And so what I used to say in my Gen Pop course, I remember Brock went to, from probably 2019, 18, I used to say the key to change is momentum. I used to tell all the trainers, because I was telling people, like, let's set fucking big epic goals. Like, people used to, back then, you know, when I came on the scene, I remember used to see PTs being like, oh, if you get a client, just change one variable at a time. Don't worry about their nutrition. Just get them used to training for a couple months, and then worry about training, getting them to eat more protein, and then worry about this. I'm like, shut the fuck up. Like, God, like, let's get some fucking results. Like, stop treating these people like babies. Like, people are just dumbing down people. And especially, you know, people have money to afford a PT. They're often business people. They're not, you know, they have the ability to actually change their training and nutrition simultaneously. And the big thing I found was, because people were like, well, how are you getting these epic results? Was that those first 2 weeks I found was what set up success. So if you get that first 2 weeks right, where you just get the base right, you get them tracking calories, they're hitting their macros, they're doing the little things well. After 2 weeks, they get a low momentum. Yes, some of it will be water weight and stuff like that, but it still says to them, holy shit, I actually got progress in those first 2 weeks. The last year I haven't been able to lose weight. The first 2 weeks I was able to make these great changes. They go, holy shit, Brock, you know what you're doing. I'm going to keep following the plan. Brock, you know how I can get great results. I believe in you now. And then in turn they go, you know what? I believe in myself. So that's one of the things I think we're going to go off on a tangent, and I apologize, but that's one of the abilities of kind of sometimes a more aggressive approach initially, is that it helps drive that sense of buy-in, that sense of self-esteem, that again, the hard things you do at the start to get started, start tracking, get up, you know, do all these little things, all these little hard things you're doing. If you do a bit more aggressive at the start, you're then in turn getting faster validation to doing those little hard things, which says these hard things are for a reason, and these hard things will yield a return on that investment. So that's why, again, I'm been a bit more of a fan of the aggressive approach, especially for more general population people lately.
Yeah, I remember you talking about the boot camp diet when we went to the Gen Pop course, and you were saying you got people on like a boot camp diet, very heavy in protein. Correct me if I'm wrong. You know,
Yeah.
a lot of greens, a lot of fiber. So, you know, try to manage their satiety as much as possible. And that 2 to 3 weeks where they dropped a fast amount of weight, and yes, some body weight, but whatever, people would be really committed. And I found that true to myself as well. And then that self-belief factor is massive. And then that change you make in nutrition also has a ripple effect into their training too, because that self-belief is contagious everywhere. It's not just, oh, I can lose fat with my diet. It's like, oh, maybe I can actually do this in my training too. So it starts to ripple effect everywhere. And then they also, you know, from a business perspective, they position you as someone that is highly knowledgeable, and it creates like a better long-term, you know, relationship with you and your client. I wanted to ask you, if you had 10 seconds, if you had 10 exercises to do for the rest of your life, and this is for you, not for, you know, your potential avatar client, you know, bikini competitor, for you yourself, for Mark Carroll, what 10 exercises would you do for the rest of your life, and why?
So these questions kind of, you have to think about, you know, there's obviously, you want to train key movement patterns, right? It's like, we want to be training, you know, the majority of the key movement patterns for our body, but then you can also combine your own personal wants and needs, right? So like, as you said, my distribution of that 10 sets in terms of volume would probably be more distributed to upper body, whereas someone training Lauren would be more heavily distributed to lower body. Yeah, I guess for me, upper body, in terms of pulling, you kind of want a vertical pull and a horizontal pull. So I'm going to give you, if I wasn't injured, because I'm always injured at the moment, because otherwise it'll just be like pin loaded machine. If I wasn't injured and I was able to do all the things I'd want to do, a vertical pull, a pull up, something like a pronated pull up, something like that, would again hit what you kind of want from them. And then I'd also add in like just like I love a prone 30-degree prone dumbbell row, or like a chest supported kind of row, something like a neutral grip. So you do like a pronated grip and a neutral grip. Vice versa, you could do a neutral grip vertical, you do a pronated horizontal, which will again change kind of like a little bit towards your back training. So there's two. I'd then try and do so with your chest, obviously that's probably a big focus of mine. So I'll try to do I love dips because I feel like they give you a nice blend of chest and triceps to give you a bit of a compound effect there. I'll probably do like a small incline, very, very small incline, or like a dumbbell press, or a chest press, like a flat chest press. So you're kind of getting like yeah. So I want to shoulders, you're going to get a lot of delts anyways from your presses. You're going to get your rear delts from your rows and pull-ups. So then you do like a lateral raise. I really love a 65-degree prone chest-supported lateral raise. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Lower body, because I'm a little bitch and I hate training lower body. I'd add a leg extension because of my injuries, and I can't be well squatting these days. So I'd add a leg extension, I'd add a calf raise, I'd add a
What sort of calf raise? Sorry.
I like a standing calf raise, just a pin load standing calf raise, straight leg. So yeah, I'd probably a good seated leg curl it depends on the brand, is a good one. So you got there 6, 7, 8. I'd add in a hip hinge, being something like an RDL. So then you're kind of getting a blend of glutes, and you could make it a little bit straighter legs if you want. And then there's 9. And then I'll add in what I've been doing lately for my quads as well, is a leg press, but like a feet low. I kind of like a really low feet foot placement leg press, again for more quad volume, because again that would be kind of a focus, and that's where you kind of get a good distribution of your quads being biarticulate. You get the leg extension and also kind of a knees over toe pressing movement. You get your hip hinge, you get your leg curl for knee flexion, you get your calves. So lower body covered. Again, I don't need the emphasis on glutes. I'd still get that from an RDL. And then upper body, you get your bang for your buck, your 2 presses, your 2 pulls, and for the lateral delts, a lateral raise. And then you get enough probably biceps, triceps from the dips and from your row motions, and that's it.
So with your pull-ups and your dips as well, do you prefer them weighted, or would you do AMRAP body weight? How do you like to structure it for yourself?
Again, if I wasn't a little bitch like I am now, who's always injured, weighted. So I think, my best with dips was at 5 20-kilo plates. I did that at Clean Golf back with Stefan. If you remember Stefan, back in I think 2016 when I was training there, I think I did 3 reps. When I was training with Wolfgang Unsold from Germany, actually. So that was my best there. Dips and they'll always be my strength, presses and stuff like that. So otherwise I'd be there for a very long time. And dips, you can, I love like 1 1/4 dips. You can do obviously a bit more leaning forward. You can do more upright for a bit more elbows. So you have options there. Pull-ups, again, definitely weighted. Like I'm a big fan with like things like, pull-ups are great because, again, like I love exercise. You can manipulate tempos. So pull-ups are an interesting one. Like technically, yes, a pull-up will be hardest at the top, but you can also make it hardest at the bottom just by dead hanging to eliminate momentum. You can do 1 1/4s at the top. You can do pauses at the top. You can do pauses at the bottom in that dead hang. You can do slow eccentrics. You can do obviously, and all your 3 arm positions, hand positions. So you've got so many options with pull-ups. And then from a rep range standpoint, something I love with pull-ups is kind of like let's say like a 4 sets with pull-ups. You might do weighted 6-4-2. So 6 reps, weighted, add weight, 4 reps, add weight, 2, add weight. Then final set, body weight, max reps. So you're not doing body weight the first set where you just go all day. You're doing body weight after you've done, some heavy shit. And again, the way I love to program pull-ups is one of the ways I love to program pull-ups for women, because I know, again, that's something that really, I think, helped me with my business, was that whilst everyone was just kind of talking glutes here, I was getting women to do weighted pull-ups for reps, weighted 1 1/4 rep pull-ups and stuff like that. And I remember one of the first times I programmed Lauren, I gave 1 1/4 rep pull-ups, and I was like, "How'd your session go?" Because she would do a lower body days with me. She's like, "Oh yeah, it went well. It went good." I was like, "How many reps did you do?" She's like, "Oh," I was like, "You didn't do it, did you?" She's like, I can't do 1 1/4 pull-ups." I was like, "What do you mean?" And then I said, "Let's go do 1 1/4 pull-ups." So I don't think I can do it. And then she did 7 reps. So a lot of people don't realize how, especially women, how strong they are in certain movements. And yeah, so it's kind of, I was like, oh, all of a sudden she started to love pull-ups because we started doing volume of them and stuff like that. So yeah, pull-ups are a great one, I find, to kind of like a squat, like squats, things like those are great for periodization, because you can do the same movement pattern, but you can add small tweaks to the movement to really keep it interesting. And also, really bias certain portions of the movement, or focus on different, really have distinct phases of focusing on different things, which also make it fun. Whereas if you just go, hey, a chest press, you're not that limited. So I feel like those, I like to call, well, I don't like to call, I learned from people smarter than me, indicator lists, like Stephen Cazalt over in America when I did internship with him in LA. He used to kind of call them indicator lists. Your program would be based around one exercise on a lower body day, and everything else kind of is built around it. And yeah, that's where I've kind of always done that. So yeah, these are what I'd call kind of my indicator lists. And so yeah, so that's how I'd kind of run it.
Yeah, I remember you talking to me about that quite a lot when I was learning from you about how you would, for a lot of men, keep incline bench press. That would be the periodization would largely be around that, and it'd be consistently in 12 weeks of the programming based around that. And I found that super helpful. One thing I wanted to touch on is, I love how open you are online about your mental health. And I coach a lot of people that deal with various, mental health complications or issues through training and through trying to improve themselves. As someone that is a coach and been doing it for years, but also going through your own mental health struggle, what have you found to be helpful in terms of just continuing to make progress, try to keep showing up, try to keep doing the thing? Because for a lot of people, they just don't want to do it and they end up stopping, and that can make it worse. I'm not saying exercise is the thing that's going to fix it, but it definitely can help. So I was wondering what you personally do.
In terms of how do I keep kind of turning up and kind of
Yeah, how do you stay motivated?
Well, I think probably the biggest truth is I definitely haven't been motivated. That's where you get, putting on, 17, 18 kilos over COVID, and then, not losing it for a long time and stuff like that. And, it's an interesting one. Like for someone like myself, I started training hard weights when I was 14, right? And so when I'm kind of going through COVID, I was 31, 32, 31 maybe. I'd been doing this for 16, 17 years. And all of a sudden I was like, what? I spent months not going to the gym, and it was this identity shift. And it's like, wait, I don't have to go to the gym. You can actually be alive and not go to the gym. And it's I had such a sense of mental burnout from just always having to go. But the thing is, reframing that over years, I've then learned when I kind of got out of that really severe depressed state was that, no, you don't have to go to the gym, but you do get the opportunity to go to the gym. And probably that is just that reframing it of, you don't have to do it. You can be 99% of the world is not like us who goes to the gym and is health-seeking individuals. 99% of the world is, again, people don't even have access. Vast majority of people don't even have the great access of even having the chance to eat healthy foods like we do in the countries we live in and have the access. But again, a vast majority of people then who do live in Australia, Americas, UKs also don't go to the gym. And so I think for me, it's kind of, I know I'm in a good place with my training when I have a plan of attack. Because again, if you're going to put yourself into a place of suffering, like planned suffering, like working hard, pushing yourself, and that works in synergy with obviously nutrition, you need a why behind it. And for me, just going to the gym, I did that the last few years, and I didn't look horrendous. I definitely didn't look good by a body and personal training standpoint, but by all accounts, I still was lifted more than most people, etc., and stuff like that. But was I happy? No. And one of the big things is it's that sense of having a method of, no, I'll rephrase that. There's a quote I kind of like, and it's suffer with purpose. I'm going to do a hard thing, but I'm going to do it for a reason. It's not just going through the motions. It's not like, you have to go to the gym to be healthy. It's, I get to go to the gym and I'm doing this at the gym today for this reason. I'm doing this exercise for this reason. I'm saying no to these foods for this reason. And so probably the biggest thing for me is I know I'm in a better place mentally with my training and nutrition when everything I do, I know why I'm doing it. Not just, I should be doing it because that's what, a personal trainer should be doing. They should be turning up to the gym. It's like, no, I'm training for a purpose. I'm doing this exercise not because this is free and I'm just trying to get something done. I'm doing it because I need to bring this body part up. I'm doing it because I'm weak here. I'm doing, getting up at, like I am at the moment, 4 a.m. or whatever, because I have to be at this goal by X and Y and Z. So it's doing things for a purpose, and it's attacking hard things, but knowing why you're doing it. And then, just that's probably the biggest thing, man. And I think it carries over to anything in life, It's like saving money. It's like, well, why are you saving money? It's hard to save money when you could be spending on anything, especially when you start making money. It's like, well, what's the why? I'm trying to save for this. Or I'm trying to invest into this. Being a really aware of, what you're doing. And that's why, like, working with clients, I think I've always done very well. And say my premium coaches, my team, like, the biggest thing with hiring my coaches was that our big thing is, yes, it's all these things, but it's really understanding goal setting. What is the goal? What do they want to achieve? When do they want to achieve it? And that kind of really formulates everything you do in life around that goal. It's just being, I think, mentally for me, it's, not going through the motions. So that's why I think personal trainers are so valuable to people, good personal trainers, if they help you set goals. And that's one of the things that even as a trainer, I've often, where it does get hard as a coach when you work with people really long term and the client you've loved training, they start to not really have much of a goal. And they're doing check-ins like, like for me as a coach as well, I find it often really hard working with people long term when I can tell they've lost that.
They lost their mojo.
Yeah. And I'm like, all right, let's set, they're like, this. And every week it's like the check-ins just kind of like, it's all right. I'm like,
didn't track on the weekend.
Yeah. And I'm like, I'd rather almost be like, all right, have a break. Don't invest your hard-earned money into this right now. Go do one of my guidebooks. And this would often happen with a lot of my clients. I'd go do my guidebooks, Bikini Body, for 12, 24 weeks. Try to do a maintenance phase. I kind of give them that. And then they come back and be like, you know what? I've had time. I'm ready to go. And because as a coach, you can only do so much. It's a terrible feeling when you feel like you want it more for your clients. And they're not getting value for money either. And you're almost walking on eggshells or typing on eggshells, when you talk to them, trying to motivate them. So I think for me, man, it's just kind of finding a reason to do everything. Like, I know life is not always about a reason, but I feel like every time you say yes to say something, you're saying no to something and vice versa. And the more that you understand why you're doing something, it also helps you find more meaning to it, especially when it gets hard as well.
And how have you found that change being a father? Do you find it different? I'm a dad of 2 girls at the moment, and I've had a change that way for sure. I definitely wouldn't say I had no purpose before having kids, but I'll definitely say there's an uptake in the way that I move now.
I remember me and Lauren did a podcast on this. She asked me this, and I was like, honestly, it hasn't really changed me just because I was so obsessive, kind of like goals driven anyways. Like, before our daughter Sailor was born, in terms of like the business standpoint, investing, like before we had her, I was doing all this stuff. But I'd actually say it's actually changed stuff in terms of actually my health and physique. I want to be more health seeking. And I posted about when we went to Hawaii a couple of weeks ago. We got married over in Hawaii, and it was our first time taking our daughter overseas, and she's 15 months old, was 14 months there. And I went to Hawaii 2 years ago, and I was out of shape. And I remember each day I didn't really want to take my shirt off. I was at Hawaii, my favorite place in the world. I didn't want to go to the beach that much, even though I was in paradise, because I just felt so shit about myself. And that was probably the big driver for me to want to get in really good shape. And people are like, oh, whatever, Mark, you did it for yourself. I'm like, well, not really, because, well, yes and no, but because me being in better shape doesn't make me more money. Like, I've looked absolutely horrendous in and that's the periods I've made the most money in my life through programs. People don't buy my programs because of how I look. I'm married. I don't need to look any certain way. No one gives a fuck how you know what I mean? So, there's no real gain for me from a sense of impressing people. No one cares, or making more money for me either. It was a standpoint of I didn't want to go to Hawaii and not want to feel good about myself, because then that would impact my mood. That would impact what I wanted to do each day. That would impact me wanting to go to the pool and swim with her, and go to the beach and swim with her. So that was kind of the real driver for me of I wanted to, for me, I struggle with, like depression and stuff like that. So I wanted to eliminate one variable, which often has made me feel really bad about myself the last couple of years, to try and help me become a better, happier person, and that was probably the big driver. And I got in really good shape for myself. And I had an amazing holiday, and I wanted to, have my shirt off, and it not from a way of like, oh wow, like he looks amazing. No, I don't look a bodybuilder or anything, but I wanted to actually be out with her. I wanted to do all these things with her. And so that's probably the biggest thing for me, is that getting in better shape builds my confidence, but not in the standpoint of, again, getting girls' attention or anything like that. Like, it's a standpoint of you feel better within yourself, which takes away one less thing to feel bad about yourself again. And, you feeling bad about yourself, unfortunately, can always have the carryover to impacting your family, in a secondary way.
100%. Thanks for sharing that, man. I appreciate it. I wanted to quickly dive into your love for investing, because I've recently discovered this probably the last couple of years. I definitely haven't dived into it as much as you, light years behind you, but I've listened to your podcast on investing, and for people that haven't, go check out Mark's podcast, and he's got this investing one where he breaks, why he did it and all that. So I don't want to dive into too much of that because it's already out there. I kind of wanted to go through scenarios to see how you think and to help people out that are at different phases. At the start of this question, I'd like you to kind of talk about why you started investing, just briefly. And then if someone has a bank account with $1,000, and then a different situation, someone with $10,000, and then someone with $100,000, how would you encourage them to spend it, or invest it, I should say?
Just buy themselves a nice thing. Just go get a car. Just go buy yourself something. No. Yeah. So, wait, what was the first question?
Like, what made you get into investing?
That's it. Yeah. Sorry.
You're right.
He was a standpoint when I started making really good money, and I didn't know much about anything like that, because I just was very kind of tunnel vision on fitness. And I just kind of started learning about it. I forget how I got onto it, but I read a book by Grant Cardone in property, and it was to kind of talk about property in the way that, if you own a house, for example, and then someone's paying you rent, you don't have to do anything. Like, you're still getting that rent money if you're in the house, right? You're still getting an income. And I thought, well, like, how cool would that be to have something where you're getting paid, and then people are not paying you because they like you. They're paying you because, to live in that property. And that sense that, whether you wanted work, or whether you were in a good mood or bad mood, or you're sick or whatever, you could be still generating an income through property. And obviously it's not as simple as that with property like that. It takes many, many years for that cash flow and how great a yield property is. It's, there's a case against it. But point is that the idea around like, putting your money somewhere and then continually to get something back without having to, go get up at 4 a.m. to train people in the middle of winter in a park and whatnot. And it felt like a way where I was making really, really good money. And, I was like, well, what can I do to keep growing? And for me, I'm a person who's always about growth. I was like, how can I get better? How can I get better? And I know something came in my mind that, I know you start to absorb new information, and it was like this whole new world, learning about all these different asset classes. And I didn't even know what like a stock was back then, and I didn't know anything about anything. And so once you learn something new, it's like really exciting. And so that's kind of what got me into it. And I wanted to kind of not be like a one-trick pony. I wanted to have, cool, I've got this great business, but then I've got these assets and they're generating wealth, and going to learn about Warren Buffett and the idea of around compounding and, building up that kind of snowball, and that snowball getting bigger over time and over time and over time. And again, like for me, as I said at the start, like I didn't really have these big financial goals with fitness. I was making all this money. I was like, well, I don't know what really to do with it, and so I wasn't a traditional business person. Looking back, a traditional business person would be like, oh, cool, we're just going to reinvest it into the business and put all these money into ads. We're going to hire a CEO. We're going to hire all these people. For me, it was just like, that's basically my salary. That's just my income. Like I wasn't a goal to grow this big fitness business. It was like, cool, I've got this money. What should I do with it? So I didn't really have the business knowledge back then to even go, hey, I should reinvest it into the business to grow it. It was more just, cool, let's use what I've got. So that's kind of what got me into investing. And it was, it's funny. I kind of got into it right around COVID, at the start of COVID, and when everyone was telling you not to buy properties because the market was crashing. And I remember reading from Warren Buffett was, when everyone's like kind of fearful and running away, that's when you attack. And so that's where I actually attacked, when we had calls with financial advisors, and they told me not to invest in property. Like some of these big financial, and everything they said was basically wrong after the next couple of years of COVID. And then I also invested heavily into things like crypto, Bitcoin and stuff like that. After it crashed back then, and I've never sold any of my crypto. I bought, back in 2020, 2021, I've held every bit of that, of my Bitcoin and stuff like that. So basically I just kind of, whatever people, the media say, and all these like kind of people, you can generally trying to do the opposite, because most of them are morons and just going off the news and stuff like that. And so, I attacked things, and then it got me really into property because, when I first invested in a property, I went really hard. And then when you get kind of the properties revalued again, I was like, oh, wow, they've gone up X amount. I was like, wow, this shit works. Wow, like all I did was buy it, and then it's gone up more than, I made in my business the last year. So, cool, this works. And again, that little bit of success and like kind of even like that momentum, like the weight loss, it makes you hungry for more and more and more. It starts to make you think big. If I can do this, then imagine if I did this and that and that. And so then it's kind of created this sense of, I think the thing with investing is that, again, it makes you think really long term. And that's something I've really struggled with, especially like my mental health, of like, like the things I invest in aren't meant to be, things that you go retire on the next day. People are like, oh, you got all these properties. Why do you work? It's like, well, because I keep buying, because, I don't, the goal is to acquire and grow that kind of, that snowball. So it just gets bigger and bigger and bigger. So that was kind of it. So it's just kind of a sense of, I wanted something, outside of fitness, and also gave me a break from just the fitness reality. So I got, to me, I love investing. It's just such a passion. I love learning. I love the feeling that the progress that you gain, and it's a real, depends on the asset class, but it's a real kind of, you can see where you're at right then and there, that day of how you're progressing. It's kind of like hitting your numbers in the gym, your squat, what weight did I do? That kind of tells you, like, I love numbers and stuff like that. My dad's an accountant. I've always liked numbers. So that's kind of led me to do it. So and I invested in property, I invested in shares, I invested in crypto and whatnot. For example, I know you've read a lot of books, and we're talking before, and emailed me all the books you've read. I'd say like all those books, they're great. I've read, I think, pretty much all of them. But again, I think kind of replaces actually doing it, So many people, read all these books, but then, you know, did you buy a property? No, I never bought anything. It's like, well, it's like you can read about business or you can read about the perfect squat, but then you never go to the gym and squat. Unless you kind of get in the game and do stuff and feel what it's like to actually have skin in the game and your hard earned money going up, going down, you don't really learn at a level until you actually live and breathe it. So that's kind of like, yeah, in terms of even like, yeah, reading about investing and all this stuff or reading about training, it really comes down to also just get into the sense that you need to just go do it and ease your way in, try stuff, learn. And for me, I made a lot of mistakes and so yeah, so luckily I was making a lot of money back then that it allowed me to, I was a pro and con because I was financially had a lot of money to invest. It, it, um, it made me make decisions probably quicker than most people who could have eased themselves in, but I was making really expensive things. And so I've had some wins, I've had some losses. But that's one, yeah, actually making money a bit more slowly, I think would have been a positive because it would have allowed me to kind of dip your toe in slower and learn and not learn at such a big rate like I was, which can be a very expensive exercise as well in negatives as well. But yeah, so that's kind of how I kind of got into the property
So,
things. Yeah.
so to come back to examples of if you had $1,000, 10,000 or 100,000, how would you look at investing those three amounts? Like, can you do enough with $1,000 if someone has that?
No, so again, so I always try to think how to word this, right? Like, if you're limited to $1,000 or $10,000 to invest, that tells me from an entrepreneurial sense that you need to go invest into courses or invest into upskilling yourself to make yourself better at what you do. Because if you invest into things that could make you better and more money, all of a sudden you don't have $1,000 to invest or $10,000 to invest. You have hundreds of thousands of dollars to invest because you've increased your value. People don't realize true investing, majority of the time you're looking at 10% returns, over a year or something, right? Historically for most asset classes. If you invest, if you had $10,000 and you put it into traditional kind of stock market, 10% returns $1,000 in a year. Congratulations. After 1 year, you've gone from 10 to 11,000. You do that again, you've now got $12,100. You've gone up $1,100. But if you put $10,000 into $5,000 learning off a great coach, into working with them for 12, 24 weeks, $5,000 into doing a business course, all of a sudden you could be earning far more. For example, I'll give you an example. One of my, clients, I remember in COVID, she was a PT. I think she was making 70, 80K or something. She then worked 2 jobs to be able to afford to work with me. And after a year of working with me, became a Bikini Pro and attacked social media. I share a lot. I think she went from making 70K to making about 400K in about a year. And the reason for it was, yeah, she spent, $5,000 every 12 weeks to work with me. So she spent a good amount of money to work with me, probably $20,000 to work with me for the year. But by then learning from me through my training, she got much more confident. She then got that secondary benefit of me sharing her to my audience. She got that association to work with me. So people, because I wasn't offering high ticket at the time. So, work with me. And all of a sudden she 5, 6 extra income just from working with a good coach. Because again, it's the multifaceted, the benefits. Likewise, for me, investing into a course, those courses that I did, those investing into courses, the return wasn't immediate. It was then a year, 2, 3 years later when I released my first program where we did make 400K in the first week. I didn't make 400K in a week. That 400K was from years and years and years of courses. So really, people go, oh, you made 400K in the first day or whatever. It's like, no, but they don't see all the costs that you did the year before. So you get that return on that investment at a much later date. But if I never did all those courses, if I never traveled the world doing internships and spending, going to LA and paid, $1,500 a day to do a pro internship for 6 days. And when I was making 80K or whatever, and I was spending everything I could, all those little investments there, 5K, 4K, $2,000 weekend courses, that made me better at what I could do. And then in turn, my value dramatically increased because I became a better coach, a smarter coach, a more confident coach. So then when I did actually then pull the trigger to start doing something, I had that value within yourself. It's like, if you see a celebrity go, they don't have a social media, and all of a sudden they start Instagram, and within like a week, they got like 5 million followers. It wasn't because their content was amazing. It was because of who they were, and then they got on social media. That value to have 5 million social media followers wasn't built from their 5 posts the first 5 days. That value was built off the previous years of being a celebrity, Hollywood, and all that stuff, and all the credentials and acting, whatever. And that's the way I often, like with investing, I look at is that really small stuff like that. Like, of course, it depends if you're like, and I'm talking from more of an entrepreneurial sense, like for personal trainer or something like that. Now, if you're a person in like a standard 9-to-5 job, like a school teacher, like my mum was a primary school teacher, making what, 60K, 70K or whatever, right? 10K there extra, for them, like they're not trying to be super rich people. That they'd invest just into their superannuation fund. They could do they pay more to accelerate their superannuation funds and stuff like that. For a lot of people, that's kind of sufficient. But sorry. The biggest thing I'd say is like, if you wanted like the Coach Mark Carroll formula that I try to get my friends, like 2 of my friends bought their first properties. One of them is a school teacher. One of them is my friend, Leonard, who's a personal trainer, who's making good money as well now. They both bought their first properties recently, and my plan of attack with them is pretty simple: get 3 properties. And so in terms of 100K, if you wanted a kind of a formula to kind of probably guarantee yourself a retirement, a successful retirement. And this is, again, not guarantee yourself being Elon Musk rich, but guarantee yourself in Australia a very, very good retirement. It might be a bit more than 100K, but my formula would be try to get 3 properties, and you want to try to get as early as you can. So let's try to get a $500,000 property. 20%, that's about 100K. So you try to get a $500,000 property, right? With fees, it might be 125 stamp duty and stuff. But if you get a property, then your goal is, and you put 125K down. Let's ignore the first home buyer stuff that's kind of coming out, which will add some variables and stuff like that. But you with 125K basically could get a property then and there, and you don't need to put any more money down to get another 2. So what happens is you get that 500K property in a good area where there'll be growth. What you want to do is, like we talk about with fat loss, is create momentum. So you want something that's going to go up quickly. You would rather something go up really quickly and slow down initially, because then you can take that equity. So let's say that 500K property goes to 650. Let's say it goes to 650 for simplicity. All right. So of that growth, that 150K in growth, you can use about 80% of that as equity. So the bank's money, the bank will give you about 80% of that, which would be about 120K. So it might take you 2 years in a good area to get that 150K growth. You then take equity out, and then you get another property. You get another 500 odd property, and then same thing. And then you've got 2 properties compounding. One property might go up another 80K, another property might go up 100K. You got 180K. Again, you can use 80% of that. And all of a sudden, you're using the bank's money. Again, you pull out to get a 3rd property. So all up, after about 4, 5, 6 years with picking the right areas, you've now got 3 properties you bought for, say, $500,000. But the first one's now worth $750, the second one's worth $650, and the third one you've just got for $500. So all of a sudden, you've got almost, close to $2 million in properties. but you only put down 100, 125K of actual cash. So this is where you use property as your vehicle for pretty much everyday kind of Australians to drive wealth building, because the benefit is that with property, when we're talking equity, things like that, people don't realize that equity is it's tax free. So you're not, it's not earned income. It's the bank's money you're using the bank's money. They're giving you, like, everyone hates on the banks, but they're literally giving you the ability to supercharge your kind of what we call accumulation phase to building your wealth. And so you're using the bank to help fund you to get more and more and more. And over the couple of years, you choose good properties, good areas will grow quickly. Yes, they kind of go in cycles, but if you can get good growth, initially it frees you up to have more equity, so then grow and grow and grow. Basically, with that 100, 125K in, if you get $1.5 million in properties over, basically, if you use the rule of 72, so rule 72 is basically, if you divide something by 72, that tells you how many years it'll take to double. So if you go, it'll go up about 7% a year. So 7 into 72 is about 10 goes in 10 times. So therefore your property will kind of double in about 10 years. So basically 100K could give you $1.5 million in property in about 3-4 years. And then that property in 10 years is worth 3 million. And another 10 years, that property is worth about 6 million if it does that kind of historical average. And so over a 20-year period, that 100K invested is now worth about 6 million. And then you add another 10 years again, when you're at retirement stage, 6 million is now worth about 12 million. And that comes back from your 100K actual cash investment. So that's basically kind of how you'd use property and equity and leverage as kind of an everyday person with not an amazing income, just a little bit of savings that you might take, yes, a fair few years to accumulate. But people, I think, feel like, yeah, it's harder. But the big thing is here with everything I just said, and I just want to throw this out there, is your ability to do this really hinges on you having a little different mindset. And that mindset is not thinking about your first asset being your own home. So if you buy your own home, that's going to actually really, really slow down your ability to actually then do this. Because if you buy a 500K house and your mortgage is 5K a month, say, or you buy a 500K house and someone is living in it and paying your mortgage. So they're two vastly different things. Because then the bank, when they try to give you more lending, they then subtract your own home, what you're paying into that mortgage. So if you're paying, say, 5K a month into that mortgage, just a nice number, they subtract that from your income. So your borrowing capacity dramatically drops. Whereas if you have a 500K house that someone else is living in and paying off, that doesn't subtract from your lending capacity or your income. So that's probably the hardest thing trying to teach people is that, if you're trying to become an investor, not getting your own home first is actually probably the way to go, which is kind of quite against what most typical people talk about in finance. The idea around rent vesting, which is quite popular with the younger community, and that this way you can, live in a nice area, but then you're not trying to buy an asset which has
area
in that area. Like you could want to live in Bondi Beach but that could be an area which is overvalued and the rent's low, whereas you could buy in a much different area, a lower socioeconomic area, which will give you far superior growth. You don't have to live in that area. You can live in Bondi and rent, buy in a different place, and then, let that kind of compounding occur. So yeah, that's kind of what I'll do with a smaller amount. I'd first go with a 1,000, go do a mini course, to learn something, to upskill. 10,000, same thing. Can you learn from a private mentor to solve bigger problems? Often you encounter bigger problems, which means you need to throw a bit more money, a bit more expertise at it. And then things like 100K, that's where you can start to use things, or, and I'm a huge fan of Bitcoin, and the benefit of Bitcoin is it's so volatile. So would I be buying Bitcoin now? No, because it's where it is in the cycle. But Bitcoin, for example, Bitcoin, I think got up to about 125K USD. I remember about 3 years ago up here, it was about 14, 15K USD. So that's, about 8x or something where it was. And so, yeah, so 8x, if you put 100K into that then when it was 15K, that would be that 100K in 3 years would be worth 800K, which is kind of pretty wild. But again, it's again with things like these, like my kind of big investment advice is that like most people don't think they think they're investing, but they're really trading. I buy things to try and own forever. So everything I buy, my intention is to have it and never sell it. Where a lot of people are like, oh, I want to buy this and flip it and do this and sell it. You have all the
Sell low,
tax.
buy high. Yeah.
Yeah, like there's obviously things run its course and stuff like that, but there's the tax around it. And ultimately, like you're getting small wins, but for example, there's kind of like good studies that show like in the American stock market, the best performing portfolios are from people who are actually dead. So people who have the best performing portfolios, so like a portfolio of like all the different stocks they buy and own, the people who do best are the ones who are dead because they don't touch it. They just let it go up and go up. And, so yeah, that's the interesting thing. So yeah, that's kind of what I would be looking at doing with, I think people don't realize that with property, you don't need a huge amount of money. Yes, you do need to have to save something because again, it's an investment. And you need to be in a position to also service that debt over the years and years. But you don't, you don't, I don't know, I see people like, oh, like I live in Sydney and a house is like $2 million. Like, yeah, but that's the house you want to live in. Buying an investment property is different. You can buy like a lot of my best performing assets up. I bought a house up here for like about 3 years ago. I think 3 years ago for 700K, and I got it valued about like 1.6 recently. So 700 to 1.6 in a couple of years. I bought another house here for 500K, and it's valued about $1 million in 4 years. Likewise, I bought a house that I bought up here 4 years ago for a lot more, and we're struggling to sell it. And the big one, like, so that hasn't probably gone up much at all. So people often think, again, like investing, you need all this money. You do need some money because you're investing, yes, your money, but it's that initial thing. And then if it goes up, especially with property in Australia, like people have a lot of like hate towards things. And I get that because I've been on the other side where I had no money and never even thought about property. But once you start to improve your financial education, you also realize that if you can just get started and get in, which is the hardest part, that first 100K, whatever, is so incredibly hard. But then if you can then get in, then the game is really rigged in your favor to help you. It feels like the world's against you at the start, but if you can then, for me, the only way I did that was create value in myself, and then, was able to generate an income from the value I created myself to then do what I did. And then the benefit of investing is that, obviously, it goes up 10%, right? 10% isn't much on 10K, but 10% on $1 million, that's 100K, so there's scale to that compounding, and it's like that time. And so, yeah, it's trying to get in early, build up that portfolio, aggressively accumulate, and then give yourself time to then just let it do its thing and you just enjoy your life. And again, so that's kind of my kind of, if I was kind of helping friends and stuff when I talk to them about property, like not everyone's trying to be like me. Like my goals are obviously different to other people, but for majority of people, like you would be blown away about how well you could do if you could get into just a cheap property, a good property, like a good asset, the one that you probably, if you're new to property investing, think the exact opposite asset that something that is not fancy, something that's not brand new, something that's not, something that you'd probably want to live in, something that's older, big block, run down to some degree, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. They're the ones which are actually your gold mine to success in the future. And it's kind of, yeah. But the hard thing is kind of getting in the game and learning and trying and making mistakes and then, yeah, you can make mistakes and learn and hopefully not too costly so you can keep playing.
So how do you balance your wins with your investments? So like obviously, so like for example, if you're running your own business, and after this we'll jump to the last question. But do you just put it like, do you keep it separate? Do you just keep your business into it makes money, you put it back in there and then you invest and just leave it there? Or do you cross over back and forward? Like how do you balance reinvestments?
Like I so whatever I make in the business, I kind of my way set up is basically I take distributions. So I don't have an income. I don't have a salary, so to speak. So I can do as I wish with that money if I want to. At the moment, we're trying to hire some big roles, so that will be the focus. And then if there is no roles I need to attack, and there's excess cash flow, a lot of profit coming in, then obviously you can take whatever profit out, if there's 5K or whatever it is. But yeah, so I'm always looking to move money somewhere. I never keep money into my accounts and just that. So yeah, I'm always either reinvesting into the business or primarily reinvest into other asset classes as well. So yeah, it's not all right, if $100 comes in here, $20 is going to go here, $20 is going to go here, $20 to go here. Well, what's happening at the moment? Property, Brisbane, I'm attacking because it's, I think, geared towards being extremely successful. And that's what I've been doing the last few years. And luckily I've been correct there. And I attacked Bitcoin the last 3, 4, 5 years, and that's been kind of successful there. So it's kind of doubling down. But right now, for example, Bitcoin I haven't touched. I haven't invested any money into Bitcoin for a long time because of the price. It's not something at a level that I think is worth investing until it drops down again, whereas property, less volatile. So it's something, yeah, you can make a bit different decisions. And same with businessman. It's like, there's different phases. So we've been investing into a new app. So it's slowed down my investing into assets. And the biggest thing is that for me, like, your primary income from your job, especially when you're young, is going to greatly surpass your earning potential for most cases than what you'd get from property initially, right? Property is a slow builder. It's something that takes time. So the thing is, like, that's why I said before at the start, like, if I invested $200,000 into a property, well, that probably went up 100K, but that $200,000 I invested into someone in your business who's an A grade player, that could lead to infinity, could lead to $20 million made in your business. It could lead to $0 made in your business as well. But the potential reward in the business setting, at least short term, is astronomically higher than saying investing into the S&P 500, etc. So it's kind of a balanced approach is something I always look at. It's like, what do you need? What do you want to double down on? Whereas, if Bitcoin dropped 80% tomorrow, I'd go hard on that. Whereas at the moment, the last 6 months or so, or the year, it's been a lot of business building. I acquired Lauren Simpson into fitness, bought out Lauren's business partners, and so we've been building a new app together there. So that's kind of been our focus there. So it's kind of goes in cyclical nature. It's not always like you have to do this and dollar cost averaging. It's kind of like, well, what do I need? Even with my property at the moment, I'm investing a bit more higher yielding properties to help balance the portfolio out for things which are more capital growth focused. So it's kind of bringing balance to what you need. But in the end, your business is ultimately your cash machine, right? So, properties, you might lose a fair few $1,000s on properties. So to hold a lot of properties, you also need to be able to service that debt, right? And so that's why it's still important to have that income really, really strong for your ability to then be able to, keep getting lending from the bank and keep growing, that asset pool.
Yeah. Last 3 questions that I have that I just want to ask and finish with. What is one thing you do every day that helps you to become better? A quote that you really love that helps you to become better, and also a book, which I know you've read a ton of books, so it's going to be a tricky one.
The one thing I do every day, I think, is I just get up at the same time these days. So even like I got my bedtime, like my wake up time, and I stay consistent with that, especially trying to get up early. Even if I'm not training or whatever, it just keeps that routine going. So that's probably the biggest thing for me, that routine. Um, um, quote, I really like the quote I said earlier again is the suffer with purpose. I remember reading it from something from the American Army, and it spoke about, doing things, yes, if it's hard, but do it with purpose and know why you're suffering. It's a lot easier to suffer for a reason. And because suffering doesn't mean forever, suffering often means short term. But if you have a why behind it, a strong why, it makes sense to what you're doing. The struggle, it makes the struggle real and makes you not want to give up. Book. Fuck. I find books hard. Like, I'm not sure if you're like me, but you read so many. It's like, oh, I take this, I take that, and stuff like that. Um, books. Trying to think. I really liked the book, a non-business kind of one. I really enjoyed years ago. Can't Hurt Me from David Goggins. I thought that was an awesome book.
I've read that one.
Yeah, he's a bit of a psycho and stuff like that, and stuff like that. But yeah, if you want to read a book and want to like just go like run through a wall after, and not be like, you'd be like, fuck, am I being soft? And do I just need to fucking get up and just get to work and stop looking for the problems? Can't Hurt Me, I think, is one where, especially as a male, you want to read, especially if you're in a bit of a down patch. Actually, I'll add in another one. Ryan Holiday, The Obstacle is the Way, is an awesome book as well. I read that. Remember when I was being sued, I got blocked from working back in like 2018 by a previous employee because I tried to leave and couldn't work. I was in the Supreme Court in Australia as a PT, and it cost me all my money back then. And it's just sit down at Coogee Beach and read The Obstacle is the Way. It's about, people, famous, successful people in history who had shit happen and they overcame it. And yeah, for me, it was an interesting time. And yeah, so that was a super, super, super cool book that I read. Yeah, so things like that where I think a lot of books I find, that's why when people always ask me about books, I just want to touch on this last point, is that people always like, what book should I read? It's like, well, where are you at in life? It's like the best stock market book might not be the best for you if you know nothing about the stock market, right?
Yeah.
And like if you're really advanced, the best book for you when you knew nothing would be different. And a lot of these books are, choosing books which are right for you, right time. Like if you're in a really down patch, reading a book like that could get you up. Whereas if you're in a really great patch, winning the day every day, you reading a motivational book probably won't have the same effect either. So that's why with books, it's kind of, don't always just think, just for everyone out there, it's like, don't always just think, these are the best books on so much. It's like, well, what do you know? It's like choosing the appropriate book. It's like, well, and same with, investing. It's like, well, what are you interested in? You don't need to learn about X or Y if it's not of interest of you, And so, yeah, that's just the thing I find with books is that sometimes people need to, it's choosing correctly. It's kind of like trying to, go to the snow and pack for as if you're going to Hawaii or something, it's like, doesn't mean, board shorts and stuff aren't perfect, but they're perfect for the right time, right location. And so that's the way I look at books as well.
Yeah, I read Obstacle is the Way at a tough time as well. It was just after, it was at the beginning of COVID, end of 2019. I left the gym. I was at Fitness First on Market Street in the CBD. I quit and I was building a fitness app at the time. Got ripped off, kind of done over by a developer. I know you're going through something, so I'm not playing victim at all, but pretty much got screwed over and I was broke. I left like my secure gym. I was broke. I was like, I'm going online beginning of 2020, and I just my wife was my girlfriend at the time. She just moved in, and I was like, I've got this, blah blah blah. And then in about the space of a month, I was broke. I had about $1,000 to $2,000 left, which in Sydney doesn't get you very far. And it was panic time. And I was reading that book, and that definitely saved me. It gave me this kind of mindset where, not like this is where I'm meant to be, but like this, if I can work through this, then there's hope that this will, give me the knowledge I need. It will make me more tough. It will build my character. And it gave me a bit of hope. And that's what I needed at the time because I was God bless. At the time, it was a rough time. But mate, I want to thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate everything you do. You know, I watch from afar. Like I was saying before we jumped on, I feel like I know way too much about you, and you don't know much about me. So it feels like I'm this kind of creep knowing too much. But yeah, man, I've been, looking up to you since I started being a personal trainer, looking at you, your knowledge, and trying to follow your path of, putting education and results first. And trying to get people results and hopefully building a great life out of it. So I appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for coming on the podcast, man.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. It was a good chat.